Ambassador Crixthon of the Valori Collective had studied over 300 species across the known galaxy. He had written detailed reports on everything from the crystalline beings of Nexar Prime to the hive-minded insects of the Thrall system. Nothing in his long career had prepared him for Earth. The human colony ship had docked at Station 17 just 2 standard rotations ago. The Valori High Council wanted immediate diplomatic contact. Humans were new to interstellar travel, having only discovered faster-than-light technology in the last 50 of their years. They seemed friendly enough. They smiled often, which Crixthon had learned was a sign of good intentions among their kind. They spoke of peace and trade. They brought gifts of art and music. But they also brought something else. Crixthon stood in the observation room, his 4 eyes fixed on the large viewing screen. His assistant, a young Valori named Selth, stood beside him. Together, they watched the humans in the recreation area of the station. "What are those creatures?" Selth asked, his voice trembling slightly. Crixthon did not answer immediately. He could not find the words. On the screen, he watched a human female sitting on a bench. Beside her sat a creature of pure nightmare. It had 4 legs, a body covered in thick fur, and a long snout filled with sharp teeth. Its eyes were fixed on the human with an intensity that made Crixthon's stomach turn. "Computer," Crixthon said, "identify the quadruped organism near the human-designated Sarah Chen." The station computer responded in its calm voice. "The organism is classified as Canis lupus familiaris, commonly known by humans as a dog. This particular specimen appears to be a German shepherd, a breed developed by humans approximately 150 years ago." "Developed?" Selth repeated. "They created these things?" The species was derived from wild predators called wolves through selective breeding over thousands of years. Wolves are pack hunters known for their endurance, intelligence, and powerful bite force capable of crushing bone. Crixthon watched as the creature opened its mouth. Its teeth were clearly visible, sharp, designed for tearing flesh, and yet the human female reached out and placed her hand directly inside the creature's mouth. Selth made a sound of horror. "She is feeding herself to it," but the creature did not bite down. Instead, it seemed to be licking the human's hand. Its tail, a long appendage at its rear, began moving back and forth rapidly. "The behavior you are observing is referred to as playing," the computer explained. "Dogs are highly social creatures that form strong emotional bonds with humans. The wagging tail indicates happiness and excitement." "Happiness?" Crixthon could not comprehend what he was seeing. "That thing is a predator. Look at its teeth. Look at its claws. It could kill her in seconds." German shepherds have an average bite force of approximately 238 pounds per square inch, the computer confirmed. They were originally bred for herding livestock, but have since been used extensively for protection, military operations, search and rescue, and companionship. "Military operations?" Selth's voice went higher. "They use these monsters in warfare?" "Correct. Dogs have served alongside human soldiers for thousands of years. They are trained to detect explosives, track enemies, and engage hostile targets." Crixthon felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. He had read the human military files. They were already concerning enough. Humans were deathworlders, after all. They came from a planet with extreme temperature variations, violent weather systems, and an abundance of dangerous wildlife. They had evolved to be persistent hunters, capable of chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would kill most species. They could survive losing limbs, organs, and massive amounts of blood. And apparently they had domesticated monsters. "I need to meet with them," Crixthon said. "Immediately." The meeting room was designed to be neutral territory. Comfortable seating for multiple species, adjustable lighting, a pleasant temperature. Crixthon had overseen hundreds of first contact negotiations in rooms just like this one. He had never been more nervous. Captain Marcus Webb entered first. He was a large human male with dark skin and a warm smile. Behind him came Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's chief science officer. She was smaller, with brown hair and kind eyes. And behind her came the monster. It was larger than the one Crixthan had seen on the screen. Its fur was golden and its tongue hung out of its mouth in a way that seemed almost relaxed. But Crixthan could see the muscles beneath that fur. He could see the power in those legs. This creature could cross the room and be at his throat in seconds. "Ambassador Crixthan," Captain Webb said, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting with us." Crixthan had been briefed on human greeting customs. He reached out and allowed the human to grasp his smaller hand. The grip was firm but not crushing. Humans, he had learned, were capable of remarkable strength, but also remarkable restraint. "The honor is mine, Captain," Crixthan managed to say. His eyes kept drifting to the creature, which had sat down beside Dr. Rodriguez. "I see you've noticed Max," the captain said, following Crixthan's gaze. "I hope you don't mind. Elena rarely goes anywhere without him." "Max?" Crixthan repeated. "That's his name," Dr. Rodriguez said. She reached down and scratched the creature behind its ear. It leaned into her touch, its eyes closing in what appeared to be pleasure. "He's a golden retriever. He's been with me for 7 years now." "7 years," Crixthan said slowly. "You have kept this predator in close proximity to yourself for 7 of your years?" Dr. Rodriguez laughed. It was a pleasant sound, but Crixthan could not understand what was amusing about the situation. "Max isn't a predator," she said. "Well, technically, I suppose he is. But he's also my best friend. He's saved my life more than once." "Saved your life?" Selth spoke up, unable to contain his curiosity. "How?" "The first time was during a lab accident back on Earth. There was a chemical fire. I was unconscious from the fumes. Max dragged me out of the building, pulled me by my coat sleeve almost 50 meters to safety." Crixthan stared at the creature. It had opened its eyes and was looking at him. There was an intelligence there, a awareness. But also something else, something he could not quite identify. "He is loyal to you," Crixthan said slowly. "Dogs are the most loyal creatures in the galaxy," Captain Webb said. "At least the galaxy we know. They've been our companions for over 15,000 years. They helped us hunt. They protected our families. They kept us warm during cold nights. In many ways, dogs are the reason humanity survived long enough to reach the stars." "I do not understand," Crixthan admitted. "How does a predator become a companion? Why would such a creature choose to serve you?" Dr. Rodriguez smiled. She looked down at Max with an expression that Crixthan could only describe as love. "Dogs don't serve us," she said. "They choose to be with us, just like we choose to be with them. It's a partnership built on trust and love. We give them food and shelter and affection. They give us protection and companionship and unconditional loyalty." "Unconditional." "A dog will never betray you," Captain Webb said. His voice had grown serious. "A dog will never lie to you or manipulate you or use you for personal gain. When a dog loves you, it loves you completely and forever. They don't care if you're rich or poor, successful or failing, happy or sad. They're always there, always waiting, always ready to give everything they have for you." Crixthan thought about the many species he had encountered, the political scheming of the Nalth, the deception of the Crix, the cold calculations of the mechanical collective. In all his travels, he had never encountered a species capable of the kind of bond these humans described. "May I approach?" Crixthan asked. Dr. Rodriguez looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, Max is very friendly." Crixthan rose from his seat slowly. His hearts were beating rapidly. Every instinct told him to flee. But he forced himself forward, one step at a time. Max watched him approach. The creature's tail began to wag again. "Hold out your hand," Dr. Rodriguez instructed. "Let him smell you. Dogs experience the world primarily through scent." Crixthon extended one of his smaller manipulator arms. The creature leaned forward, its nose twitching. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Max's tail wagged faster, and before Crixthon could react, the creature's tongue licked his arm. Selth gasped. But Crixthon stood frozen, not from fear, but from wonder. The creature's tongue was warm and wet. Its eyes looked up at him with an expression that was almost hopeful. "He likes you," Dr. Rodriguez said warmly. "How can you tell?" "The licking, the wagging tail. He's trying to show you he's friendly. Dogs communicate a lot through body language." Crixthon slowly withdrew his arm. He looked at the wet spot where Max had licked him. He looked at the creature still wagging its tail. He looked at the humans watching him with small smiles. "In my 200 years of diplomatic service," Crixthon said slowly, "I have encountered many things I did not understand. Species that communicated through colors, beings that existed partially outside of normal space, creatures that lived for thousands of years." He paused, looking at Max. "But I have never encountered anything like this. A partnership between two species, predator and prey, that became something greater. Something built on love." Captain Webb nodded. "That's humanity, Ambassador. We form bonds. It's what we do. With each other, with other species, with anything capable of giving and receiving love. Even monsters," Selth said quietly. Dr. Rodriguez laughed again. "Max isn't a monster. He's a good boy." As if understanding the words, Max's tail wagged even faster. He let out a short bark, a sound that made both Valori flinch. But there was no aggression in it, only joy. Crixthon looked at the creature that other species would surely classify as a nightmare. Teeth designed for killing, speed and strength far beyond what his own species possessed. The instincts of a predator passed down through countless generations. And yet here it sat, happy and content, because a human had called it good. "I believe," Crixthon said slowly, "that I have much to learn about your species, Captain Webb." "We're happy to teach you," the captain replied, "but first, there's something you should know." "What is that?" Captain Webb grinned. "Max isn't the only dog on our ship. We have 23 of them. Different breeds, different sizes. Some are trained for security, some are trained for medical detection, and some are just here because their humans couldn't bear to leave them behind. 23. Crixthon felt his legs weaken slightly. "Would you like to meet them?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. Crixthon thought about what he had seen, what he had felt when the creature had licked his arm, the warmth, the acceptance, the strange, inexplicable sense that this monster wanted nothing more than to be his friend. "Yes," he said finally, "I believe I would." As they walked toward the docking bay, Max trotting happily beside Dr. Rodriguez, Crixthon began composing his report to the High Council in his mind. He would have to explain that humans were even more dangerous than they had initially believed. They did not merely survive on their death world. They did not merely overcome its challenges. They befriended its predators, and in doing so, they had created companions more loyal than any soldier, more devoted than any guard, more loving than any family. The galaxy called them monsters. Humans called them good boys. And Crixthon was beginning to understand why. 3 weeks had passed since the human colony ship arrived at Station 17. In that time, Crixthon had learned more about dogs than he ever thought possible. He had watched them play with their humans. He had seen them work alongside station security. He had even allowed Max to sit beside him during diplomatic meetings, much to the shock of his Valori colleagues. The station had grown used to the presence of these creatures. Some of the braver aliens had even approached them, receiving the same enthusiastic greeting Crixthon had experienced. Licking, tail wagging, that strange, happy energy that seemed to radiate from every dog he met. But not everyone on Station 17 welcomed the humans and their companions. The Kreth delegation had arrived 2 days ago. They were a reptilian species from the far side of the galaxy, cold, calculating. They viewed all other species as either useful tools or potential threats. They had expressed immediate disgust at the presence of dogs on the station. "You allow these beasts to roam freely?" Ambassador Drexnack had demanded during their first meeting. "This is an outrage, a violation of basic safety protocols." "The dogs are well trained and pose no threat," Crixthon had explained. "I have spent considerable time with them. They are gentle creatures." Drexnack had laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Gentle? They are predators, and humans are fools for trusting them. One day those beasts will turn on their masters. It is the nature of all predators." Now, as Crixthon walked through the station's main corridor, he thought about those words. He did not believe them. He had seen the bond between humans and dogs too clearly. But the Kreth ambassador's warning still echoed in his mind. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a distant alarm. Crixthon stopped walking. The alarm was coming from the lower levels, the storage and maintenance sections. Few people went down there except for scheduled work crews. His communicator buzzed. "Ambassador Crixthon," a voice said urgently. It was Station Security Chief Vorn. "We have a situation. Please proceed to the command center immediately." Crixthon hurried through the corridors. When he reached the command center, he found chaos. Multiple screens showed different areas of the station. Security personnel were shouting orders, and in the middle of it all stood Captain Webb and several other humans, their faces grim. "What is happening?" Crixthon demanded. Chief Vorn turned to him. The large, blue-skinned alien looked deeply troubled. 15 minutes ago, we detected unauthorized access to the lower maintenance levels. When we sent a security team to investigate, they were attacked." "Attacked? By whom?" "We don't know. The attackers are using some kind of jamming technology. Our cameras are down in most of that section. All we know is that 3 of my officers are injured and another 5 are missing." Crixthon felt his blood run cold. Pirates? Terrorists? Unknown. But whoever they are, they've sealed off the lower levels, and they've taken control of the station's life support systems. The room went silent. Life support. If the attackers could control that, they could control everything. They could suffocate entire sections of the station, kill thousands with the push of a button. "We're working on regaining control," Chief Vorn continued. "But our technicians can't get past their blocks. We need to physically access the main control room in the lower levels." "Then send more security teams," Crixthon said. "I've tried. Every team I send down there goes silent within minutes. The jamming prevents communication. We're sending people in blind." Captain Webb stepped forward. "Let us help." Chief Vorn looked at the human with uncertainty. "Captain, I appreciate the offer, but this is a security matter. Your people are civilians." "My people include former military personnel," Webb replied. "And we have something your security teams don't." "What?" Webb looked toward the doorway. Dr. Rodriguez stood there, and beside her was Max. But Max was different now. Gone was the relaxed, happy expression. The dog's body was tense, alert. Its eyes scanned the room with sharp focus. "We have dogs," Webb said simply. Crixthon watched as 6 more humans entered the command center. Each had a dog at their side, different breeds, different sizes, but all of them wore the same expression as Max, focused, ready. These were not pets enjoying a leisure day. These were working animals prepared for a mission. "Dogs?" Chief Vorn sounded confused. "How can those creatures help?" "Dogs can detect things we can't," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "They can smell changes in the air. They can hear sounds far below our range of hearing. They can track scent trails that are hours old. If there are enemies hiding in those corridors, our dogs will find them before they can find us." More importantly, Webb added, dogs are fiercely protective. If anyone tries to hurt their handlers, they will respond with everything they have. Chief Vorn looked at the dogs. Crixthan could see the doubt in his eyes. These creatures were alien to him in every sense of the word. He could not understand their value, but Crixthan could. Let them try, Crixthan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I have observed these humans and their companions for weeks, he continued. There is a bond between them that I have never seen in any other species, a trust that goes beyond logic. If Captain Webb believes his dogs can help, then I believe him. Chief Vorn hesitated. Then the station shuddered. The lights flickered. A warning message appeared on the main screen. Life support fluctuation detected. Oxygen levels in sectors 12 to 15 decreasing. We're running out of time, Vorn said. He looked at Webb. Very well, Captain. Your teams will accompany my security forces. But understand that I cannot guarantee your safety. We don't need guarantees, Webb replied. We have something better. He looked down at his own dog, a muscular black Labrador named Shadow. The dog looked back up at him, tail still, eyes focused. We have good boys. The descent into the lower levels was tense. Crixthan had insisted on joining the team. He was not a fighter, but he was a diplomat, and if there was any chance of negotiating with the attackers, he wanted to be there. The team consisted of 12 humans, each with a dog, and 8 Valori security officers. They moved through the dimly lit corridors in silence. The jamming made their communicators useless. They were truly alone. Max walked at the front of the group, nose to the ground. Dr. Rodriguez watched him carefully, reading every twitch of his ears, every shift of his body. He's got something, she whispered. The team stopped. Max had frozen in place, his body rigid. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Enemies ahead, one of the human soldiers said. A woman named Sarah with a Belgian Malinois named Thor at her side. Dogs don't lie? They approached a junction where 4 corridors met. Max's growl grew louder. Then Thor joined in, followed by the other dogs. 6 canine voices creating a chorus of warning. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Figures in dark armor emerged from the shadows. They moved fast, faster than Crixthan had expected. They carried weapons that crackled with energy. But they had not expected the dogs. Max launched himself at the nearest attacker before the figure could raise their weapon. The golden retriever's jaws clamped down on the attacker's arm, teeth punching through the armor. The figure screamed and fell. Thor was already on another, his leaner body moving with incredible speed. The Malinois hit the attacker in the chest, knocking them backwards, then went for the throat of their suit. Shadow tackled a third attacker just as they aimed at Captain Webb. The Labrador's weight bore them to the ground, and Shadow's teeth found the gap between helmet and chest plate. Crixthan had never seen violence like this. It was brutal, savage. The dogs fought with a ferocity that justified every fearful thought he had ever had about them. But they were not attacking randomly. They were not out of control. Each dog was protecting its human. Each strike was calculated to neutralize a threat. And when an attacker fell, the dogs immediately looked for the next danger rather than continuing to savage their downed opponent. The fight lasted perhaps 30 seconds. When it was over, 8 attackers lay on the ground, either unconscious or too injured to continue. The dogs stood over them, panting, their eyes still sharp. Not a single human or Valori was seriously hurt. "Good boy," Dr. Rodriguez said, kneeling beside Max. There was blood on the dog's muzzle. Attacker blood, not his own. She wiped it away gently, and Max's tail gave a small wag despite the tension of the moment. "What are they?" one of the Valori officers asked, staring at the fallen attackers. Captain Webb removed a helmet from one of the unconscious figures. The face beneath was Kreth, reptilian features, cold eyes that even in unconsciousness seemed calculating. Ambassador Drexnak's people, Webb said grimly. It seems the Kreth were not just here for diplomacy. Crixton felt anger rise within him. The Kreth had violated every treaty, every principle of peaceful cooperation. They had tried to take control of the station by force. We need to keep moving, Sarah said. Her dog, Thor, was already looking down the corridor, ears forward. There are more ahead. Thor can smell them. They pressed on. The dogs led the way, detecting ambush after ambush before the attackers could spring their traps. Each encounter was quick and decisive. The Kreth had weapons and training, but they had nothing to match the dogs. The animals seemed to anticipate their enemies' movements. They communicated with their handlers through subtle signals that Crixton could not understand. A glance, a twitch of the ear. A slight change in posture. The humans read these signals instantly, responding before conscious thought seemed possible. It was beautiful. And terrifying. They reached the main control room 40 minutes after descending into the lower levels. 12 Kreth soldiers guarded the door. Behind them, Crixton could see the hostages. The 5 missing Valori security officers, bound and gagged. Ambassador Drexnak stood in the center of the room, his clawed hand hovering over a control panel. "Stop!" he shouted when he saw them. "Come any closer, and I will vent the atmosphere in every civilian section of this station. Thousands will die." The team halted. The dogs stood ready, their bodies tense, but they did not advance. They looked to their humans, waiting for commands. "Why are you doing this?" Crixton asked. "What could possibly justify this madness?" Drexnak laughed. "The galaxy is changing, Ambassador. The weak are being replaced by the strong. The Valori have grown soft, comfortable. You have forgotten that power is all that matters." "And the humans?" Crixton pressed. "What have they done to you?" The Kreth ambassador's eyes narrowed. "Humans are an abomination. A species that forms emotional bonds with predators. That wastes resources on creatures that serve no logical purpose. They represent everything wrong with the galaxy. Sentiment over strength, love over power." He spat the word love like it was poison. "When I control this station, I will show the galaxy what real power looks like, starting with the execution of every human on board, and every one of their disgusting pets." Captain Webb stepped forward. His hand rested on Shadow's head. "You've made a mistake," Webb said calmly. "Have I? You are outnumbered, outgunned. One wrong move and thousands die." "That's not the mistake I'm talking about." "Then enlighten me, human." Webb smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a species that had clawed its way up from the bottom of a death world. A species that had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. A species that had never stopped fighting, never stopped adapting, never stopped loving. "You called our dogs disgusting," Webb said. "You threatened to kill them." He looked down at Shadow. The Labrador looked back up at him. An understanding passed between them that went beyond words. "Dogs understand more than you think," Webb continued. "They know when someone means them harm. They know when someone threatens their family." The dogs had spread out, slowly, almost imperceptibly. They now formed a loose semicircle, each one facing a different group of Kreth guards. "And there's something you should know about dogs," Webb finished. "They will die to protect the ones they love. Every single one of them." Drexnak's hand moved toward the control panel. He never reached it. The dogs moved as one, not in a wild charge, but in a coordinated assault that targeted the Kreth soldiers with surgical precision. Thor reached Drexnak first, hitting the ambassador's arm and pulling it away from the panel. Max and Shadow took down the guards on either side. The other dogs engaged the remaining soldiers. The Valori security officers joined the fight moments later, but by then, it was already over. The dogs had neutralized the biggest threats. The remaining Kreth were quickly subdued. Drexnack lay on the ground, Thor standing over him. The Malinois' teeth were inches from the ambassador's throat. One word from Sarah and those teeth would close. "Call off your beast!" Drexnack screamed. Sarah looked at him with contempt. "Thor is not a beast. He's a soldier, and he's better at it than you'll ever be." She knelt beside her dog, running her hand along his back. "Good boy, Thor. Stand down." Thor stepped back from the ambassador, but his eyes never left the fallen Kreth. Ready, always ready. Crixthon walked over to where Captain Webb stood. The human was checking on the hostages, helping to untie them. Shadow sat beside him, tongue hanging out, looking for all the world like a happy pet rather than a warrior. "How did you do that?" Crixthon asked. "The coordination, the timing, it was perfect." Webb smiled. 15,000 years, Ambassador. That's how long we've had to learn to work together. We know our dogs. They know us. When it matters, we don't need words." He scratched Shadow behind the ears. The dog's tail wagged. "They would have died for us," Webb said quietly. "Every single one of them would have thrown themselves into those weapons without hesitation. That's what it means to be a pack. You protect your own, no matter the cost." Crixthon looked at the dogs scattered around the room. They had returned to their handlers now. Some were being praised. Some were being checked for injuries. All of them looked happy, content. They had just fought a battle. They had just risked their lives. And all they wanted in return was a pat on the head and the words, "Good boy." "I was wrong about them," Crixthon admitted. "When I first saw them, I saw monsters, predators waiting to strike. And now?" Crixthon watched Max lean against Dr. Rodriguez's leg. The scientist was crying softly, overwhelmed by the danger they had just survived. Max looked up at her and licked her face. Her tears turned to laughter. "Now I see family," Crixthon said. The station was saved. The Kreth were arrested. The life support systems were restored. But as Crixthon watched the humans and their dogs walk back toward the upper levels, he knew that this was just the beginning. Word would spread. The galaxy would learn what had happened here. They would learn about the humans and their monsters. Some would be afraid, but some, Crixthon suspected, would understand. Love was the most powerful force in the universe, and humans had found a way to share it with another species entirely. That was not monstrous. That was magnificent. News of the Station 17 incident spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species with access to interstellar communication learned about the Kreth attack. They learned about the hostages and the threat to thousands of innocent lives. They learned about the human response. But most of all, they learned about the dogs. Crixthon sat in his office on the station, reading through the countless messages that had flooded his terminal. Diplomats from dozens of species wanted information. Scientists requested permission to study the human-canine bond. Military leaders asked about the dog's combat capabilities. And mixed among these official communications were countless personal messages. Ordinary citizens from worlds scattered across known space, all asking the same question: how could predators become companions? A soft knock at his door interrupted his reading. Dr. Rodriguez entered, Max padding quietly beside her. The golden retriever had fully recovered from the battle. His fur was clean, his eyes bright, and his tail wagged gently as he saw Crixthon. "You wanted to see me, Ambassador?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "Please, sit." Crixthon gestured to a chair. Max immediately settled at his owner's feet, resting his head on her shoe. "I have been receiving many requests. The galaxy is fascinated by your dogs." "I've noticed. Our ship has been flooded with similar messages. Everyone wants to know about dogs, what they eat, how they're trained, whether they can be acquired." That was one question I saw frequently. Several species have asked if humans would be willing to sell dogs to them. Dr. Rodriguez's expression hardened. "Dogs aren't property to be sold. They're family members. I explained as much in my responses. But this raises an interesting question. How did your species come to view these animals as family, rather than tools or assets? The scientist was quiet for a moment. She reached down and stroked Max's fur. The dog's eyes closed in contentment. "It happened gradually," she finally said. "Thousands of years ago, wolves began living near human settlements. They ate our scraps. We tolerated them because they warned us when dangerous animals approached. Over generations, we began selecting for wolves that were more friendly, more helpful, more willing to work with us." Selective breeding. Your computer mentioned this. Yes, but it was more than just breeding. It was a relationship. Humans are social creatures. We form emotional bonds easily, sometimes even with things that can't bond back. Cars, homes, toys from childhood. But dogs are different. Dogs can bond back. She paused, her hand still moving through Max's fur. There's a chemical reaction that happens in both species when a human and a dog look into each other's eyes. The same hormone that bonds mothers to babies. Oxytocin. We literally evolved to love each other. Our species grew together, changed together, became something new together. Crixthon considered this. He had studied many symbiotic relationships across the galaxy, creatures that shared resources, species that provided mutual protection. But this was something deeper. This was emotional symbiosis, psychological partnership on a fundamental level. "The Galactic Council has requested a formal presentation," Crixthon said. "They want to understand the human-canine bond and its implications for interspecies relations. I believe this could be a significant moment for your species." "A presentation? You want us to explain dogs to the galaxy?" "I want you to explain love to the galaxy." Dr. Rodriguez looked surprised, then she smiled. "That's a big job. I believe you are equal to it." The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest enclosed space Crixton had ever seen. It stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction, with seating for representatives of over 500 species. Holographic projectors allowed millions more to watch from their home worlds. Crixton stood at the central podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. Creatures of every shape and size filled the seats. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, some did not breathe at all. But all of them watched with intense curiosity as the humans took their places on the presentation floor. Captain Webb stood at the front, Shadow beside him. Behind him were Dr. Rodriguez and Max, Sarah and Thor, and a dozen other human-dog pairs. The dogs sat calmly, despite the thousands of eyes watching them. They trusted their humans. That was enough. "Honored representatives," Crixton began, "we have gathered to discuss an extraordinary relationship, one that has shaped human evolution, one that has influenced human culture, society, and achievement. One that may offer lessons for all species in the galaxy." He stepped aside, gesturing for Captain Webb to take his place. The human walked forward, Shadow matching his pace perfectly. Webb looked out at the vast assembly without fear. Humans, Crixton had learned, did not frighten easily. 15,000 years ago, Webb began, my ancestors huddled in caves, surrounded by darkness and danger. We were not the strongest species on our planet. We were not the fastest. We had no claws or fangs or armor. By all logical measures, we should have gone extinct. He paused, letting the words sink in. But we survived. We survived because we learned to work together. Not just with each other, but with another species entirely. A species that by every measure should have been our enemy. Webb gestured to Shadow. The Labrador stood, tail wagging gently. Wolves were predators. They hunted in packs. They killed prey many times their size through teamwork and persistence. They were dangerous, deadly, everything that should have made them our competitors. He knelt beside Shadow, one hand on the dog's head. But instead of fighting, we formed a partnership. Wolves helped us hunt. They warned us of danger. They protected our children. And in return, we gave them food, shelter, and something they had never experienced before. What was that? A delegate called out. Crixthon recognized the speaker as Ambassador Threx of the Nolthian Federation. Webb smiled. A place in our family. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Family was a concept that varied widely between species. Some reproduced asexually and had no concept of familial bonds. Others lived in vast hives where individual identity was subordinate to the collective. The idea of including a different species in one's family group was radical. Over thousands of years, Webb continued, we shaped each other. We bred wolves to be smaller, friendlier, more attuned to human emotions. And they changed us as well. They made us more responsible, more nurturing, more capable of unconditional love. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. The bond between humans and dogs is not based on logic or calculation. It is based on trust. Complete, absolute trust. When a dog looks at their human, they see someone who will never abandon them. Someone who will protect them no matter what. Someone who loves them not for what they can do, but simply for who they are. She looked down at Max. The dog looked back up at her. And when we look at our dogs, we see the same thing. A delegate from the Crystalline Collective raised a geometric limb. This emotional bond is interesting, but what practical value does it provide? Resources spent on these animals could be used for more productive purposes. Sarah stepped forward, Thor alert at her side. Practical value? Dogs have saved countless human lives. They detect diseases before our most advanced scanners. They find survivors in collapsed buildings. They warn soldiers of hidden explosives. They guide blind humans through crowded streets. They provide emotional support to those suffering from trauma. She paused, her hand resting on Thor's neck. But that's not why we keep them. We don't keep dogs because they're useful. We keep them because we love them. And they love us back. Love is an inefficient emotion, another delegate argued. The speaker was a member of the Mechanical Collective, a species that had long ago merged with artificial intelligence. It clouds judgment, creates irrational attachments, reduces optimal decision-making. Captain Webb turned to face the speaker. You're right. Love is inefficient. It makes us do things that don't make logical sense. Humans will run into burning buildings to save their dogs. We will spend our last credits on medical care for an aging pet. We will travel across star systems to be reunited with animals we have known for only a few years. He looked around the assembly. But love is also what drives us to greatness. Humans went to the stars not because it was efficient, but because we wanted to see what was out there. We build art and music and stories not because they serve a practical purpose, but because they make us feel something. We form bonds with other species, not because it benefits us, but because we cannot help ourselves. Webb walked among the human-dog pairs, gesturing to each one. Every one of these dogs would die for their human. They do not question it. They do not calculate the odds. They act out of pure love. And every one of these humans would do the same for their dog. He stopped in the center of the floor. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our technology or our weapons or our strategies. Our capacity for love. Our willingness to sacrifice everything for those we care about. Our refusal to abandon our pack, no matter the cost. Silence filled the great hall. Hundreds of species processing what they had heard. Millions more watching from distant worlds. Then Crixton stepped forward. I was among those who first encountered humans and their dogs, he said. When I saw these creatures, I felt fear. Their teeth, their claws, their predator instincts. Everything about them seemed designed for killing. He walked over to Max and slowly, carefully extended his hand. The golden retriever sniffed it, then licked it gently. I was wrong. These animals are not monsters. They are mirrors. They reflect the best parts of the humans who care for them. The loyalty, the devotion, the pure, uncomplicated love that so many species have lost or never possessed. He turned to face the assembly. The humans call them good boys, a simple phrase, almost childish. But in those two words is contained a truth that I believe applies to all of us. Every species in this galaxy is capable of goodness, of forming bonds beyond logic, of loving and being loved in return. Crixthon looked at the humans and their dogs. We can learn from them, not how to create weapons or wage war, but how to build connections, how to trust, how to love something different from ourselves and be loved in return. A delegate from the Nolthian Federation stood. Ambassador Crixthon, what would you recommend? Should other species attempt to domesticate predators as the humans have? Crixthon shook his head. No. The human-canine bond took 15,000 years to develop. It cannot be manufactured or rushed, but the principle behind it can be applied. Every species has the capacity for connection. Every species can choose to see others as potential partners rather than threats or tools. He walked back to the central podium. The humans have shown us something important. They have shown us that the greatest strength is not found in weapons or technology or cold logic. It is found in the bonds we form with others, in our willingness to trust, in our capacity to love. Captain Webb returned to the podium, Shadow at his side. He looked out at the assembled delegates, at the countless eyes watching from across the galaxy. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, he said. Species we could learn from and grow with. Partners in the great journey of existence. Some of you have welcomed us. Some have tried to destroy us. But regardless of how you choose to see us, know this. He placed his hand on Shadow's head. We will never stop loving. We will never stop forming bonds. We will never stop treating our companions, regardless of species, as family. It is who we are. It is what makes us human. Shadow looked up at him and wagged his tail. And to us, that will always be something to be proud of. The presentation ended. The delegates dispersed to discuss what they had seen. Messages flew across the galaxy as millions processed this new understanding of humanity. But Crixthon stayed behind. He watched as the humans gathered their dogs and prepared to leave the Great Hall. Max was playing with a small ball that Dr. Rodriguez had produced from her pocket. Thor was having his ears scratched by Sarah. Shadow lay at Captain Webb's feet, completely content. Ambassador? Webb noticed him watching. Was there something else? Crixthon hesitated. Then he made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. Captain Webb, I have a request. Of course. What can we do for you? Crixthon looked at Max, still playing with his ball. At Thor, leaning into Sarah's touch. At all the dogs, happy and loved, and completely at peace in the presence of their humans. When your species establishes colonies on new worlds, you will no doubt bring dogs with you. I would like to request that, when appropriate, you consider allowing other species to learn from your bond. Not to take dogs for themselves, but to observe, to understand, to perhaps find similar connections with creatures on their own worlds. Webb smiled. It was a warm smile, a genuine smile, the smile of a species that had overcome extinction through love and refused to stop sharing it. Ambassador, that is exactly what we hope to hear. He extended his hand. Crixthon took it. Welcome to the pack, Webb said. Behind them, Max barked happily. Thor's tail wagged. Shadow stood and stretched, looking up at his human with eyes full of devotion. The galaxy had called them monsters. Humans had called them good boys. And now, finally, the rest of the universe was beginning to understand why. In the years that followed, Crixthon would often think back to that day. The day he realized that the most terrifying thing about humans was not their resilience or their creativity or their stubborn refusal to give up. It was their capacity to love. They loved fiercely. They loved unconditionally. They loved across species boundaries and logical objections and 15,000 years of evolution. And in doing so, they showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be good. Not good at fighting or building or conquering, just good. The way a dog is good, simply because it chooses to be. That, Crixton decided, was the greatest lesson humanity had to teach. And he, along with countless others across the stars, was finally ready to learn it.